All right, welcome into Hat Studio 3A. I'm Eric Pfeiffer, and I'm joined by Mike Silver with Kokomo Grain. I promised you earlier that we would have some video with Mike and market analysis, and here it is. We'll give you a peek behind the curtains here of how we do this each Thursday with Mike. We always give Mike a call to get market analysis that shows up on our Hat Morning Edition podcast, as well as on our 70-plus radio stations across the state. So, Mike, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad to do it, Eric.
All right, well, let's give the folks a peek into how we do this here, Mike. I'll count us down. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. This is Hoosier Ag Today and the closing farm market reports for Thursday. I'm Eric Pfeiffer, and I'm joined by Mike Silver with Kokomo Grain to break down a day in the markets, Mike, where really we had a pretty good day. Some optimism in the marketplace. Let's start with corn. D's finished up 394 3/4. What was going on in the corn market today?
Well, a little optimism about the U.S.-China talks, Eric, after he said, she said, or he said, she said, let's put it that way. The market still is trying to figure out exactly what the phase one agreement is going to contain, time frame, commodities, amounts, so on and so forth. But any day we can get green numbers on our quote board as harvest pace is picking up and progressing is a good day. So I'm going to call today a good day. In the December corn futures market, we're pushing up against close to the 200-day moving average at about 401. So that's going to act as a little resistance to us here as we advance harvest progress. Speaking of harvest progress, in the report that was out a day late because of Columbus Day on Tuesday, 24% of the Indiana corn crop harvested compared to the 5-year average of 41. So clearly we are well behind the pace here in Indiana as well as in the U.S. U.S. at 22 versus the 5-year average at 36. So corn harvest is gradually engaging itself. Corn receipts here at Kokomo today are reasonable as we're about 70% complete on soybean harvest here in this part of the state. Indiana's harvest progress for soybeans, as reported Tuesday, was 30% compared to 47%, and the U.S. was 26% versus 49% for the 5-year average. But like I say, here in this part of northwest central Indiana, we're approaching the 70% mark on harvest completion for soybeans. And for the most part, soybean yields have been, I'm going to say, respectable, probably better than we had expected earlier on. Lots of yields in the upper 50s, quite a few in the 60s, and a few in the 70s. And unfortunately, some of the really adversely affected bean yields down in the 40s and an occasional 30. But overall, bean yields appear to be pretty good. Now, in the corn, a little bit different story. We really have not had that much corn harvested yet, but yields are all over the place, anywhere from 150. We've seen some 200 plus bushel yields, but anecdotally, at least now from the evidence and the reports we're getting from customers and other folks in the industry, is yields are about 20 to 30% less than they were last year. Of course, last year was record yields, so it's not surprising that the yields are off from last year. But I would say overall, corn yields are probably a little disappointing. Eric, corn moistures coming in out of the field here in this part of the state right now. I just looked at the averages before the call here, and our average moisture inbound today is about 24%. Corn has not been drying down as fast as we would like to see it dry down, but pretty low relative humidity out. If we could have a little more heat out there in the countryside would help a lot. But moistures are starting to come down and the harvest pace, as I say, is starting to accelerate here. Basis levels for corn still historically good. We're at 16 over the December futures here at Kokomo. A few of the ethanol plants paying a little better numbers than that, but atypically strong basis levels for this time of the year. So good day overall, Eric, in the markets, and we're glad to see the weather forecast where it is. It looks like, although it's going to be a little cooler on the cooler side, it looks like we're going to be devoid of moisture until maybe next week. So we should put a good finish on harvest activity here at the end of this week and into and through the weekend. And all the Kokomo grain locations are running extended hours to accommodate the harvest. So we're moving along as fast as we can.
Now, does it concern you at all, Mike, that these numbers that are coming in, a lot of those are from corn and beans that got in what most farmers would say on time? Some of the stuff still out there in the field is the stuff that got in late. Really could only get worse from here, right?
Right. It's not going to improve from this point forward, and certainly some of the later planted crops. There are a few fields of corn around yet that still have not reached black layer, and that's physiological maturity. So we could see some challenges yet in some of these final acres as they're harvested. And harvest is not going to be completed anytime soon.
So, as far as all this China stuff is concerned, Mike, we're hearing day by day some different stories. We did get some confirmation from China's Ministry of Commerce today that they say they will be increasing their purchase amounts of U.S. farm products. They didn't say how much or in what kind of timeline, but how does the market kind of, work this process of we don't know what's going on, plus harvest where we still don't know what's going on and probably won't until it's all harvested?
Well, the yo-yoing volatility in the market, I think, is indicative of what you just explained. Until we get more detail, and the market wants some detail. It wants some time frames. It wants some quantities. It wants some product mixes. It wants to know when. The funds are actually, commodity funds are actually now net long the soybean futures market. They are still short in the corn market, but suffice it to say, the funds do not want to be caught on the wrong side of this market when we get some confirmation of what we hope to be favorable outcomes for the U.S. farmer. The simple fact is, in my opinion, China needs our grain. They, as a country, are concerned about their food security. We know what's going on over there with the African swine fever. We know the decimation to their hog herd. We know that their domestic pork prices are soaring. They're high. We know that they want to rebuild that herd as quickly as they can. They want to build their and increase their use of ethanol as a petroleum source. And certainly we have plenty of ethanol to export. We did have a 900,000 build in ethanol stocks this last week at 22.1 million barrels. Our average weekly ethanol, average daily production this week was up 8,000 barrels a day at 971,000 barrels a day. That's obviously well under the million barrels a day that we had been posting here for the most of the season. Market is still perplexed now about President Trump's promise of some better outcomes in terms of biofuels usage and ethanol usage, but what he said versus what EPA came out with earlier this week are kind of at odds, and it has the ethanol and biofuels industry confused, and naturally the grain markets are confused a little bit. But we need more definition, more clarity before these markets can work higher. But we are in harvest, so it's not surprising to see a little bit of pressure from day to day. But overall, I would say from a price standpoint, we're probably a little better off today in our futures price levels than we thought we were going to be maybe 30, 45 days ago. Still a long way to go, but we have cash corn above $4 and cash soybeans above $9. So it's better than it could be, Eric.
Yeah. And we mentioned Dees corn finished up 394 3/4, up 3 on the March as well, 406.5. Novi beans up 3.5, 931.5, and up 3 on the January as well, 945.25. Wheat was the upside leader, up 12.25 at 525.5. Mike Silver there with Kokomo Grain, providing his commentary. Thanks so much, Mike. You can get in touch with Mike by giving him a call there at Kokomo Grain, 800-666-0613. And you can also find some info at kokomograin.com, Mike.
Absolutely can. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today, Eric.